Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving into Gland Pharma's Q3 FY25 performance today.
Ooh, exciting.
And get this, we've got their press release,
Okay.
earnings call transcript,
Nice.
and their investor presentation.
Awesome. So we got lots to dig into.
We do. We're going to try to break down what's really going on with Gland Pharma, this big player in the injectable medications world.
Yeah, it's a really interesting company, especially right now.
Why do you say that?
Well, they're doing really well in their core business, but they're making some big changes, trying to
Like branching out.
exactly, moving into new areas.
Okay, well, let's start with the basics then.
Sure.
Give me the big picture, the high-level numbers.
All right. So for the quarter, they brought in $13,841 million in revenue.
Okay.
EBITDA margin was 26%.
Not bad.
And they launched 13 new molecules.
That's a lot.
It is.
Impressive.
Yeah.
But there was one thing that really caught my eye when I was looking through this stuff.
Oh, yeah. What's that? Biologics.
Ah, yes.
They're getting into biologics.
They are.
What's the big deal about that?
Well, I mean, biologics are like complex drugs, right?
Mm.
They come from living organisms, and they're being used to treat more and more diseases.
Oh, I see. So like...
Cancer, autoimmune disorders, all sorts of things.
So this is a big shift for Gland Pharma.
I think it is, yeah.
Moving away from just those generic injectables.
It seems like it. I mean, it looks like they're really aiming to be a major player in this new...
Higher stakes game.
Yeah, exactly. Higher value, more complex part of the market.
It's like they're leveling up or something.
You could definitely say that.
So, I mean, that's got to be good for their bottom line, right?
Well, potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah. I mean, it could lead to higher profits. Less competition, too.
Oh, interesting. Less competition. How so?
Well, you've got your traditional generic drug makers, right?
Right.
Biologics. It's a different game, so they wouldn't necessarily be competing with those same companies.
So they're carving out their own little niche.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. But, we got to talk about their revenue.
Oh.
It went down 10% year over year.
Yeah, 10%.
What happened there?
Well, it seems like a big part of that is shipments.
Shipments.
To the U.S. They had some problems with their shipments, particularly for this one product, Inoxa.
Inoxa. Okay, remind me what that is again.
It helps prevent nausea and vomiting after surgery.
Ah, right.
So it's a pretty important product for them.
I see.
And it looks like they just weren't able to ship as much as they planned.
So one product really dragged their revenue down.
It seems like it, yeah.
That's a little concerning, isn't it?
Well, it could be.
I mean, for investors, that's something they would want to watch.
For sure. But the company seems to think it's just a temporary problem, They're saying...
Doing blip on the radar.
Exactly. They should be able to recover those volumes in the next few quarters.
Interesting. What's making them so optimistic?
Well, they did mention some supply chain challenges. So it sounds like they just weren't able to get the product where it needed to go.
Global supply chains, what a mess.
It's been a wild ride, hasn't it?
All right, so Inoxa shipments down, revenue dipped, but there's this one thing that really surprised me.
What's that?
Their base business.
Oh, interesting.
Excluding Cenexi, that subsidiary of theirs, they had a 39% EBITDA margin.
That's pretty impressive.
It is.
Especially with the Inoxa situation.
Yeah. So let's break this down for a sec. What is EBITDA again?
So EBITDA, it stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Right.
It's basically a way to measure profitability.
Okay.
Without all those financial and accounting things muddying the waters.
Gotcha.
So it gives you a better idea of how the company's actually doing.
So despite that revenue dip, their base business is actually doing really well.
It seems that way, yeah.
What's driving that?
Well, there are a couple of things.
Okay, lay it on me.
First, they've been focusing on their higher margin products.
That's a smart move.
Right. And then they've also been really good at controlling costs.
Cost control. See, that always makes me a little nervous when we're talking about pharmaceuticals.
Why is that?
Well, I always worry, does it mean they're cutting back on research and development?
That's a great question. And you know what? They actually talked about that in the earnings call.
They did?
They did. They're actually increasing their R&D spending.
Really?
Yeah. Especially for, well, you guessed it, biologics.
Of course.
And complex injectables.
Oh, so they're not just cutting costs across the board.
Nope.
It's more about being strategic.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So we've talked about their core business, but what about Cenexi?
Ah, yes.
Cenexi, they're based in Europe, right?
That's right.
And it sounds like they've been having a bit of a tough time.
Yeah, a bit.
What's the deal there?
Well, from what I gathered, it's a mixed bag.
Mixed bag, how so?
On the one hand, they had some production setbacks.
Setbacks. Like what?
Well, there was this inspection, unannounced inspection,
Oh, unannounced. By who?
by the French authorities.
It doesn't sound good.
No, not really. It was at their facility in Fontenay,
Hmm.
and it seems like there were some compliance issues.
The compliance issue. So they had to, like, halt production.
It seems that way, yeah,
Ooh, that's got to be costly.
for sure.
So compliance issues in France. What else is in this mixed bag?
Well, the interesting thing is, even with all that,
Yeah.
they're still aiming for a positive EBITDA next fiscal year.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they're projecting a turnaround.
That's pretty ambitious considering.
It is, right?
But how are they going to do it?
Well, their plan seems to be based on two main things.
Okay, I'm all ears.
First, they need to hit a certain revenue number,
What number are we talking?
200 million.
All right.
And second, they're bringing some new production lines online
New production lines. Where?
in France and Belgium.
Got it. And those are higher capacity.
That's right. Ampoules, prefilled syringes, lyophilizers, the whole shebang.
Wow. They're really going all in on this turnaround.
It seems like it, yeah,
A lot riding on that, I'd say.
definitely.
So we've got Cenexi on this turnaround track.
Right.
And we've got Gland's core business humming along.
They're pretty well, yeah.
What do you think are the biggest challenges for them moving forward? Based on all this, of course.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think one challenge is going to be managing all of this at the same time.
I see.
Growing the core business, turning Cenexi around.
Yeah. Juggling all those balls in the air.
Exactly. It takes a lot of resources,
Right.
a lot of careful planning.
For sure.
And then there's the biologics expansion.
Right.
That's a huge opportunity. But
That's a long game.
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world, different regulations, different partners.
I think they're starting a whole new business.
Almost, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so let's zoom in on the core business for a second. What really popped out at you from the investor presentation? Anything jump out?
You know what caught my eye?
Hmm.
Complex injectables.
Bumplex injectables.
Oh, really focusing on those.
I mean, it makes sense. We already talked about
Higher margin,
Yeah.
less competition.
So how far along are they?
Well, they've got this portfolio of 19 products,
Oh, wait.
and they've already completed 9 filings.
9 down, 10 to go.
Exactly. And get this, the market potential for those 19 products,
Don't leave me hanging.
U.S. $7.1 billion.
Whoa, hold on. How do they know that? Where'd that number come from?
It's from IQVIA data. Pretty reliable stuff.
Okay, I trust you.
Good. And there's more.
Hit me.
They've got 15 more complex formulations that they're working on with a partner,
A partner. Who are they working with?
a company called MAIA Pharmaceuticals.
MAIA Pharmaceuticals. Okay. And these 15 formulations, are those also complex injectables?
Yep.
So when are those expected to, like, hit the market?
FY27.
Oh, wow. So a few years out.
Yeah, they're thinking long term.
Hold on. Back up a bit. You said co-development. What does that mean exactly?
It means they're sharing the development costs with MAIA Pharmaceuticals.
Oh, I see.
And the risks, too, of course.
I guess that makes sense. Spread the love a little bit.
Right. Especially for these more complex products, they take a lot of investment, a lot of expertise.
So it's like a strategic partnership.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So they're being smart about how they're spending their money.
I feel like.
It's not just about throwing money at every new idea that comes along.
They-
They're focusing on the areas where they think they can really excel
That's right.
and potentially make a lot of money.
That, too.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Got to keep those investors happy.
right. But it's also about making a difference, you know?
Of course, of course.
Right.
Developing new medications, improving people's lives.
Exactly.
So they're trying to strike that balance.
Seems like it.
Profits and purpose.
Yeah.
That's the sweet spot.
It is.
All right, so we've got a pretty good picture of their core business now, but let's switch gears and talk about Cenexi again.
Okay. Back to Europe.
Yeah, they're facing a different set of challenges, right?
Definitely.
What stood out to you about their situation?
Well, for me, it's the contrast.
The contrast.
Yeah, between their struggles.
That inspection having to stop production.
Exactly. And then on the other hand, this goal of being profitable next year.
It's quite a leap, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Like, how do you go from...
From compliance issues to profitability.
Exactly. It's a head scratcher.
And I guess it just goes to show how complex this industry is,
Right.
right? Absolutely. Especially when you're operating on a global scale.
Yeah, you've got different regulations in different countries.
Different challenge.
Unexpected things popping up all the time.
It's a lot to manage.
It is.
So what do you think are the key factors that'll determine whether Cenexi can actually pull this off?
Well, first and foremost,
Yeah.
they got to fix those compliance issues.
Right, right. Regain the trust of those regulators.
Exactly. That's crucial in this industry.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they need to get those new facilities up and running.
Ramping up production.
Exactly.
Getting those orders coming in.
That's it.
So it all comes down to execution.
Pretty much, yeah.
They've got the plan, but can they make it happen?
That's the million-dollar question.
And I imagine it requires a lot of attention to detail.
Oh, absolutely.
This industry, pharmaceuticals, it's all about precision, quality control.
Any little mistake can have huge consequences.
That's scary.
It is, yeah.
So we're talking a lot about numbers and strategies and all that.
Right.
But I can't help but think about the people involved.
The human element.
Yeah, the people who work at Cenexi.
Hmm.
What do you think it's like for them right now?
Well, honestly, it's hard to say.
I guess our sources don't really delve into that.
No, not really.
But I bet it's a pretty stressful time.
Yeah, I would imagine. All this uncertainty about the future.
Job security.
Right. The pressure to turn things around.
It must be a lot to deal with.
Definitely.
It's a good reminder that business decisions have real impacts on people's lives.
They do.
Sometimes we forget that.
Easy to get caught up in the numbers.
It's all about the bottom line, right?
Yeah, but we got to remember the people behind those numbers.
Well said, well said. Okay, so we've covered a lot.
Yeah, we have.
Gland Pharma's financials, their expansion into biologics, the challenges at Cenexi.
With the human side of it all.
Exactly. I feel like we're starting to put the pieces together.
It's a complex puzzle.
It is. But what do you think is the most intriguing question that's emerged from all this?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think the biggest question is this. Can Gland Pharma really pull it off?
Pull it all off, you mean?
Yeah, become this global leader in the pharmaceutical industry.
They've got the ambition.
They do.
They're making some big moves.
But can they execute?
Can they adapt?
Exactly. That's the question.
Because this industry, it's not standing still.
Constantly change.
New challenges all the time.
That's the nature of the game.
So it's not just about what they're doing today.
Right.
It's about how they're going to navigate the future.
And that's what we're going to try to figure out in the rest of this deep dive.
I can't wait. But first,
Yeah.
let's take a quick break and give our listeners a chance to catch their breath.
Sounds good to me.
What are your initial thoughts, everyone? What's standing out to you so far? We'll be back in a moment to dive even deeper into the world of Gland Pharma.
See you soon.
Okay, so we've got this picture of Gland Pharma.
Yeah.
Strong core business,
Mm-hmm.
ambitious plans, especially with biologics.
For sure.
And of course, Cenexi over in Europe needs some work.
It does.
But I think we need to, zoom out a little bit.
Zoom out.
Yeah, look at the bigger picture. What's happening in the pharmaceutical industry as a whole?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't just look at one company in isolation.
You're right.
Yeah.
So what are some of the big trends right now? And how does Gland Pharma fit into all of that?
Okay, well, one major trend is the demand for complex generics.
Complex generics. Okay.
Yeah, so more and more patents are expiring on those brand name drugs,
Right.
which means there's a huge opportunity for companies that can, make generic versions.
And Gland Pharma can do that.
They can, especially these complex formulations. It's not easy to do.
So they're in a good spot.
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
But they've got to stay ahead of the curve.
Meaning?
Well, there's a lot of competition out there.
Ah, I see. So other companies are trying to do the same thing.
Exactly. Especially other Indian pharmaceutical companies. They're all looking to expand globally.
It's like a race to the top.
It kind of is, yeah.
And then you've got the cost of healthcare.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
Real issue.
For sure. Governments and insurers are trying to, keep costs down.
And that's where generics come in, right?
Exactly. They're a more affordable option.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
So Gland Pharma has to be really good at controlling their costs.
they do. That's one of their key strengths, actually.
Okay, but they can't cut corners on quality.
Oh, absolutely not. Especially with injectables.
Right. Safety is paramount.
Yeah, any mistake could be really serious.
So those US FDA inspections,
Those are huge.
the fact that they got those reports, that's a really good sign.
It is. It shows they're meeting the standards.
Which brings us back to Cenexi.
Yeah. That trust is so important.
Especially if Gland Pharma wants to be seen as a global leader.
Exactly. They need to have that reputation for quality.
So they're balancing a lot.
They are. Growth ambitions, quality control, compliance.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. But that's what makes this whole thing so interesting, you know?
I'm starting to see that, yeah. It's not just about the numbers, it's about this whole complex web of factors.
Right. And makes you think, what are the biggest risks for them moving forward?
Ooh, good question. Like, what could go wrong?
Exactly. Because understanding those risks, that's key to understanding their future prospects.
Okay, so let's play that out. What are some things that could derail their plans?
Well, competition's a big one, right?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Lots of companies are trying to do the same thing.
If Gland Pharma can't compete on price or quality, they're in trouble.
They are. And then there's regulation.
Ah, right. Those inspections.
Exactly. They could face more challenges.
Delays in getting products approved.
Yep, that could really set them back.
Push back their revenue projections.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's execution risk.
What's that?
Well, they've got these plans, right?
Yeah, ambitious plans.
But can they actually make them happen?
Ah, I see. It's one thing to have a plan, another to execute it.
Right. It takes strong leadership, skilled people, and honestly, a little bit of luck too.
So many things have to go right.
They do. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. It's not a simple story. It's a dynamic narrative.
Yeah, lots of twists and turns.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the risks, but what about the opportunities?
Oh, there are plenty of those too.
Hmm.
Like we said, the market for complex generics is booming.
Right, those patents are expiring.
Exactly. And Gland is in a great position to capitalize on that.
They've got the expertise.
They do. And then there's biologics.
Ah, yes.
The big one.
It's a whole new world of possibilities.
Higher stakes, higher rewards.
That's it. And remember, that revenue from their biologics partnerships, it's expected to start coming in next year.
So it's not just a long-term play.
Nope. There's potential for short-term gains, too.
Interesting. Interesting. Anything else?
Well, we haven't talked much about emerging markets.
Oh, right. Like countries with developing healthcare systems.
Exactly. And those markets, they represent a huge opportunity.
How so?
Well, as those healthcare systems develop, the demand for pharmaceuticals is going to skyrocket.
I see. So there's this untapped potential there.
Exactly. And Grand already has a presence in many of those countries.
Really?
Ah.
How many countries are we talking?
Over 60.
Wow, that's impressive. They're really a global company.
They are.
Yeah.
And that gives them an advantage over some of their competitors. That makes sense. So they're playing a global game catering to all sorts of needs and budgets.
Exactly. And that's why their strategic decisions are so important.
They have to be thinking about all of this.
They do. They're responding to this complex, ever-changing global landscape.
Okay, so we've got this interplay of risks and opportunities, a new CEO,
Right.
and a whole industry that's transforming.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It is. And what's really fascinating is how it's all connected. Gland's success depends on so many things.
Not just their own actions.
Right. They have to respond to all these external forces, too.
Exactly. They're part of this larger ecosystem,
And that ecosystem is constantly changing.
which means they need to be adaptable.
Agile.
Exactly, like
Yeah.
they're surfing on a giant wave.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Right. Constantly adjusting their balance.
So they don't wipe out.
Exactly. And that wave, it's not slowing down. This industry is only going to get more complex.
So Glens, be ready for anything.
They do. And you know what? I think they are.
All right, we've explored this complex world of Gland Pharma.
It is a complex world.
And I think we have a better understanding of how this industry works now.
I hope so.
But before we wrap up, I have one more question for you.
Okay, shoot.
So we've talked about all this stuff with Gland Pharma,
Yeah.
their ambitions, the trends in the industry, all that. But I want to bring it back to our listener for a second.
Okay.
Why should they care about all of this?
That's a great question. I mean, this isn't just about Gland Pharma, right? This is about understanding healthcare, how it's changing, what the future holds.
So Gland Pharma is like
A case study, almost.
Okay, I like that.
You see these trends playing out with them?
Willie?
Well, the complex generics, the biologics, those emerging markets,
Right, right.
those are trends that are happening everywhere in the industry.
And those trends affect us.
They do. Big time.
How so?
Well, think about it. The cost of your medications,
Okay.
what treatments are available,
Right.
even just being able to access healthcare.
It's all connected.
Exactly. So by looking at Gland Pharma, we're really getting a glimpse into the future of healthcare itself.
That's pretty cool when you put it that way.
It is, right?
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Gland's performance, their strategy, the risks, the opportunities.
The whole shebang.
What's the one thing you want our listener to walk away with?
That's a tough one. I guess I'd say this. The pharmaceutical industry, it's changing fast.
It is.
And Gland Pharma, They're right there in the middle of it all.
Leading the charge.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
And what they do, it's going to have a big impact on everyone, on the whole healthcare system.
So we should all be paying attention.
I think so, yeah.
Not just to Gland Pharma,
but to the bigger picture.
the future of healthcare.
Exactly. And that future, well, it's exciting, but it's also a little bit uncertain.
There's a lot riding on it.
There is. So much is changing.
So last question for you.
Okay.
Gland Pharma, they seem to be doing well.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a plan. They're executing. But what should we be asking ourselves to understand where they go from here?
Well, that's the thing, right? The pharmaceutical landscape, it's constantly evolving. So the real question is, how can Gland Pharma use its strength to navigate all those changes?
Ah, I see. Stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's not enough to just have a plan.
You got to be able to adapt.
Exactly.
That's a great question to leave our listeners with today.
I hope they find it thought-provoking.
This deep dive, it's not just about understanding Gland Pharma today.
It's about understanding what comes next.
For them, for the whole industry.
And ultimately for all of us.
Well said. It's been a pleasure diving into all of this with you.
Likewise.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those questions, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next one.